Representative Brandon Gill just grilled the ABA president on implicit bias, race-based Supreme Court nominations, and the ABA's contradictory positions on diversity. He asked if all of us have implicit biases. She said the ABA believes diversity is important. He asked against which groups she has implicit biases. She said the ABA looks to remove barriers.
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its
Is that a
realms
yes?
is
Can I take
important.
that? It's a yes or no question. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases, as your website says?
The ABA looks to remove barriers, and we examine...
That's not my question, ma'am. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases?
He asked if race was a factor in Ketanji Brown Jackson's nomination. She said she has no idea. He pointed out that President Biden explicitly said he would nominate the first black woman. He asked if it was proper for Biden to exclude black men. She said the ABA does not support discrimination. He asked if the Supreme Court should roughly resemble America's racial makeup. She said, diversity is important.
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its forms is important. We
So
want
it is a
people to
good
bring all of who they are, whether they be from small practice or
Diversity,
large practice.
can you define diversity here? You want it to, should the Supreme Court resemble America's racial makeup, roughly? It's a yes or no question.
The ABA does not support quotas.
I'm not asking about quotas. I'm asking if it should roughly resemble America's racial makeup.
He pointed out that 2 of 9 justices are black, about 22%, while the black population is 13%. He asked if the Senate should refuse to confirm a 3rd black justice. She said the ABA does not support quotas. He said his time was up. He yielded. Let's watch.
I now recognize myself for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions. And thank you to all of the witnesses, again, for taking the time to come before this hearing, which I think is incredibly important. Ms. Banky, according to the ABA's website, quote, all of us have implicit biases. Would you agree with that statement?
The ABA believes that diversity, equity, and inclusion improves the practice.
Would you agree with the statement that, quote, all of us have implicit biases from the ABA's website?
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its
Is that a
realms
yes?
is
Can I take
important.
that? It's a yes or no question. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases, as your website says?
The ABA looks to remove barriers, and we examine...
That's not my question, ma'am. Do you believe that all of us have implicit biases?
I've expressed what the ABA is doing.
That
with
is
its
the
diversity work.
ABA's position as expressed by their website. Against which groups do you have implicit biases?
The ABA believes that it's important to always explore...
Are you going to filibuster? Because it doesn't make you sound very good. I'm going to ask you again, against which groups do you have implicit biases?
It's important to always examine everyone's point of view and where they may need to consider...
It is. What about your point of view?
I am here as the president of the American Bar Association,
And I'm asking you what your implicit biases are.
the ABA as an entity.
Have you reflected on your implicit biases?
I think about how I operate
What are they?
the world constantly.
Would you like to explain to us what they are?
I am here speaking on behalf of the ABA and the
All right,
ABA's...
we're going to move on. Was race a factor in Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court nomination?
I have no idea how that process works. I'm a real estate lawyer.
President Biden stated, quote, I've made no decision except one, and that's that person will be the first black woman ever nominated to the United States Supreme Court. So I think it's fair to say that race was and gender were factors in that nomination process. Wouldn't you agree?
You would have to have a conversation.
He explicitly stated that, so I think it's fair to say. I mean, you're a lawyer. I think that's fair to say. Do you think that it's just or righteous that Joe Biden explicitly excluded black men in the nomination process for the Supreme Court vacancy?
The ABA does not support discrimination of any sort.
So you don't think that it was proper for Joe Biden to exclude every group other than black women in deciding who should fill that Supreme Court vacancy? Is that your testimony?
The ABA relishes diversity, equity, and
Right,
inclusion.
but is it acceptable for Joe Biden to exclude black men in the nomination pool for the Supreme Court?
The ABA never supports discrimination.
That's good to hear. And you believe, I think, tell me if that the Supreme Court should roughly resemble the racial diversity of the country?
The ABA does not believe that quotas are appropriate. It is
According to the ABA's mission statement on its website, it states that judges, it increases the quality of our judicial system whenever judges resemble the vast racial diversity of our society. So would you say that it's helpful, it's beneficial if our Supreme Court resembles the racial diversity of America?
The ABA believes that diversity in all of its forms is important. We
So it
want
is a
people to
good
bring all of who they are, whether they be from small practice or
Diversity,
large practice.
can you define diversity here? You want it to, should the Supreme Court resemble America's racial makeup, roughly? It's a yes or no question.
The ABA does not support quotas.
I'm not asking about quotas. I'm asking if it should roughly resemble America's racial makeup.
It should represent all of what people are.
Of
and
what
all
people
their
are, okay. So
experiences.
right now, there's about two of nine of Supreme Court justices are black. That's about 22% of the Supreme Court. According to your testimony, about 13% of America's population is black. If the Supreme Court should roughly resemble America's demographic makeup, as the ABA states is proper, in your opinion, regardless of qualifications, should the Senate refuse to confirm a third black Supreme Court justice?
The ABA supports and encourages diversity in all of its forms.
That wasn't my question. My question was, if a Supreme Court vacancy opens up, should the Senate refuse to confirm a third black Supreme Court nominee based on his race or her race?
The ABA does not support quotas, and so
The ABA does
hypothet-
support some sort of, and hopefully we'll get into that. The ABA does support making sure the ethnic makeup has a specific amount. But my time is up, so we will move on. And with that, I yield.
Representative Brandon Gill just delivered a masterclass in how to expose the contradictions and evasions of the American Bar Association's position on diversity, equity, and inclusion. He did not come with a speech. He came with questions. He came with the ABA's own website statements. He came with the goal of forcing the witness to admit that the ABA supports discrimination in the name of diversity. And he left no doubt about the answer. The exchange between Gill and the witness was not just a routine hearing. It was a confrontation about the fundamental question of whether our legal institutions will adhere to the principle of colorblindness or embrace racial preferences. It was about whether the ABA will continue to promote discrimination in the name of diversity. Gill began by asking if all of us have implicit biases. He quoted the ABA's website, which states, "All of us have implicit biases." The witness did not answer directly. She said the ABA believes diversity is important. Gill asked again. She said the ABA looks to remove barriers. Gill asked again. She said the ABA's position is expressed by their website. Gill asked against which groups she has implicit biases. She said the ABA believes it is important to always examine everyone's point of view. Gill asked if she was going to filibuster. He said it doesn't make her sound very good. He asked again. She said she thinks about how she operates in the world constantly. Gill asked if she would like to explain what her biases are. She said she is speaking on behalf of the ABA. Gill moved on. The exchange about implicit bias is revealing. The ABA's website says all of us have implicit biases, but the witness would not say whether she has implicit biases. She would not say against which groups she has biases. She would not say what her biases are. She evaded. She deflected. She hid behind vague language. The ABA claims to be committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but it cannot even acknowledge its own biases. It cannot even say what its biases are. It cannot even say against which groups it is biased. That is a problem. If the ABA cannot acknowledge its own biases, how can it help others acknowledge theirs? The ABA's website makes a bold claim. It says all of us have implicit biases. But when asked to apply that claim to herself, the witness refused. She would not say what her biases are. She would not say against which groups she is biased. She would not say how she is working to overcome her biases. She said she thinks about how she operates in the world. That is not an answer. That is an evasion. Gill then asked if race was a factor in Ketanji Brown Jackson's Supreme Court nomination. The witness said she has no idea how that process works. She said she is a real estate lawyer. Gill pointed out that President Biden explicitly stated that he would nominate the first black woman to the Supreme Court. He asked if it was proper for Biden to exclude black men. The witness said the ABA does not support discrimination. Gill asked if it was acceptable for Biden to exclude black men. She said the ABA never supports discrimination. Gill asked if the Supreme Court should roughly resemble America's racial makeup. She said diversity is important. Gill pointed out that 2 of 9 justices are black, about 22%, while the black population is 13%. He asked if the Senate should refuse to confirm a 3rd black justice. She said the ABA does not support quotas. Gill said his time was up. The question about Ketanji Brown Jackson is particularly revealing. President Biden explicitly said he would nominate the first black woman. That means race and gender were factors. The ABA claims to oppose discrimination, but it supports race-based nominations. It supports gender-based nominations. It supports the very thing it claims to oppose. The contradiction is glaring. The ABA cannot have it both ways. It cannot claim to oppose discrimination while supporting discrimination. It cannot claim to support colorblindness while supporting racial preferences. It cannot claim to be neutral while promoting a political agenda. The ABA's position is incoherent. It says it opposes discrimination, but it supports race-based admissions. It says it opposes quotas, but it supports diversity goals that function as quotas. It says it supports colorblindness, but it supports racial preferences. Gill's argument is devastating. He did not need to prove that the ABA supports discrimination. He only needed to show that it cannot defend its position. He showed that the ABA's website says all of us have implicit biases. He showed that the witness cannot say what her biases are. He showed that President Biden explicitly considered race in the nomination process. He showed that the ABA supports that. He showed that the ABA supports racial preferences. He showed that it is evasive and contradictory. He showed that it is not being honest with the American people. The ABA is a powerful institution. It sets the standards for the legal profession. It influences the judiciary. It shapes the law. It should be held to a high standard. It should be able to defend its positions. It should be able to answer simple questions. It cannot. That is a problem. The ABA's position on race-based admissions is particularly troubling. The Supreme Court has ruled that race cannot be a factor in admissions. The court has said that the Constitution requires colorblindness. The ABA should respect that ruling. It should not support policies that violate the Constitution, but it does. It supports race-based admissions. It supports discrimination. It supports the very thing that the civil rights movement fought against. That is a betrayal of the principles of the civil rights movement. That is a betrayal of the principles of the Constitution. That is a betrayal of the principles of justice. The ABA is supposed to uphold the rule of law, but it is undermining the rule of law. It is promoting discrimination. It is promoting the very thing that the Constitution prohibits. The larger issue here is not just about the ABA. It is about the broader debate over diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is about whether our institutions will adhere to the principle of colorblindness or embrace racial preferences. Gill argued that they should adhere to colorblindness. He argued that they should judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. He argued that they should not discriminate on the basis of race. He was right. The principle of colorblindness is the foundation of the civil rights movement. It is the foundation of the Constitution. It is the foundation of a just society. When we abandon colorblindness, we abandon justice. When we embrace racial preferences, we embrace discrimination. When we support diversity, equity, and inclusion, we support the very things that the civil rights movement fought against. The hearing ended without the witness offering a meaningful defense. She sat there, She listened. She evaded. She said the ABA supports diversity. She did not answer the questions. She did not defend the ABA's positions. She did not explain the contradictions. She said the ABA supports diversity. That is not a defense. That is an evasion. It is the kind of answer that a witness gives when she does not want to admit the truth. It is the kind of answer that a witness gives when she hopes the committee will move on to the next question. Gill did not move on. He stayed. He pressed. He asked the questions. He did not let her off